Hello and welcome to Pillow Talk. I feel like I always want my videos to be so aesthetic and then I end up not posting them because I'm just like, that's boring. Nobody's gonna watch that. But like, honestly, I don't care. I just like to talk, and if people want to listen to me talk, that's fine. But I'm gonna talk and I'm gonna post it on the internet because I need to get the thoughts out of my head and put them somewhere, and you guys are right there, so why the frick wouldn't I put it there? So anyway, so what I really wanted to talk about, because I was just watching a video. I was watching Kai Foster's video talking about basically the discourse around autism and just sort of educating people and just different aspects of autism. It made me think because, okay, it made me think of a couple of things. We're going to start, number one, with the fact that there are 7.9 billion people on this earth. That is a lot of people, right? So when people say shit like, and maybe this is my autistic brain just taking it literally, because I try not to say this when you're like, oh my God, like everyone's doing this. Like, no, everyone is not doing this. Like a small fraction of people are doing this. So when people say everybody is diagnosing themselves with autism, I'm like, unfortunately, that is not the case. Not unfortunately. I mean, maybe unfortunately for you and your stupid perspective, your dumb opinion. That's not true, because number one, everybody in the world is not even on social media. 4.89 billion people out of the 7.9, almost 8 billion people on this earth are on social media. And of that 4.89 billion people, do you really think that you were seeing all of those people ever? No, because we were all on different parts. I don't find myself very often on straight people TikTok, and I see a very small amount of content compared to whatever amount of content is actually out there. There's so much content and there's so many people, there's simply no way that you're even seeing half of that in your time on social media. There's no way. Like, I don't even know if you're seeing a third of it. I don't know math like that, but all I know is there's simply no way that you're seeing everybody. So to say everybody is diagnosing themselves is just such a stupid thing to say, because everybody isn't diagnosing themselves. You see a lot of people who are self-diagnosing, but the funny thing is that most of those people who are self-diagnosing with autism or ADHD have it. These are the people that couldn't go to therapy or to a psychiatrist or to a professional evaluator and get diagnosed. So they had to do it them fucking selves. What's crazy is I couldn't even go to a I see a psychiatrist. And if I wanted him to talk to me about autism, I would have to bring it up, because he's not going to bring it up to me. Why? Because there is such a lack of education around autism, and mental health professionals are also biased. So they might still be adhering to these old criteria of autism and ADHD and any other neurodivergencies. Honestly, typically I feel like this is pretty standard, is like when you go to the doctor, like a lot of the time I feel like most people will be like, I was doing some research and I think it's this, and typically they're right? But a lot of the time, in order to get a doctor to listen to you, you have to tell them what you think it is. So you have to do your research first before you can bring it up to them. And especially when it comes to autism, because if you are not a cisgender white man with the stereotypical symptoms of autism, if you don't fucking like trains and you're not a genius, they're really just going to be like, I don't know what the fuck's wrong with you. Maybe you're bipolar. Maybe you have borderline personality. You're depressed. You have anxiety. I don't know what to tell you. You have all of the above. Except for this one thing that's right here that kind of encompasses all of that. No, you just have all of that. Not only that, but especially if you are assigned female at birth, and if you are, drum roll please, not white. If you are assigned female at birth and or a person of color, you are going to have an even harder time getting that diagnosis from a professional, because 20 years ago, when I was a child, all everybody knew, like, universally about autism is the stereotypical signs of autism. Your child who can't make eye contact, your child who can't or doesn't play with other children, your child who has explosive meltdowns, your child who covers their ears at loud sounds and doesn't respond to their name. So 20 years ago, I wouldn't even be considered for autism. I wouldn't have even considered myself for autism 20 years ago because we just didn't have that research to support it. But here we are in 2023 where we do. So yeah, naturally, a lot of people who now are adults who wouldn't have even been considered for autism 20 years ago, and that's why nobody noticed, of course now we are coming around to realize as more research surfaces, hey, like, that makes a lot of sense for me. And what's crazy, this is another point. We're sliding into point 2, kind of. But I've spent a lot of time in the autistic community since I have decided to start identifying, self-diagnosing myself as autistic. I've spent a lot of time in the autistic community. I'm in Discord chats, Discord servers with autistic people, a healthy mix of self-diagnosed and also formally diagnosed, people who are waiting to be formally diagnosed. I am in autism Reddit groups. I've surrounded myself in this community. Why? Because I've never felt like I fit in anywhere, but you know where I feel like I fit in? The autistic community. Why do we think that is? I'll wait. No, I won't. I have ADHD. I'm impatient. It's because I'm autistic. What I have found, and, you know, obviously the autistic community is not a monolith, and every autistic person is not going to agree, because everybody's different. But the general consensus that I have found is that the majority of the autistic community welcomes and accepts self-diagnosis. So it's really funny to me that typically the people who tend to have an issue with self-diagnosis are autistic people. So it's really funny because it's kind of like, it's Black History Month, so I can say this and not feel weird. It's kind of like when white people get more mad at people of color issues than the people of color. Like, you're going really fucking hard to defend us, and, like, I appreciate it, but, like, it's really not that deep, you know? So it's like for autistic people to be saying, you can't self-diagnose as autistic. Well, who the fuck are you to tell me that? Are you in the autistic community? You're taking resources from the autistic community. What fucking resources am I taking from them by saying that I think I'm autistic? What fucking resources do you think I am getting? What accommodations do you think that I am stealing? The loop fucking headphones, over the ear noise cancellation headphones, fidget toys? Like, what accommodations do you think there are? I need you to give me an itemized list, please, because maybe there's something there that could actually help me. Oh, wait. As far as I have found, there are a lot of cons to getting a formal autism diagnosis. And the conclusion that I have come to is that, for me personally, the only reason that I would go to get a formal diagnosis is if somehow I was going to get drafted for war, or if I worked at a job or went to a school where I would need formal documentation of my autism to receive accommodations. For me personally, those are the only reasons why I would pursue a formal diagnosis. Sometimes I think about it because I'm like, I feel like it would give me peace of mind, because, and I feel like autistic people don't know this, and I feel like people who are diagnosed feel the same thing. I've heard people say it. I have bad imposter syndrome. When I'm fine, my brain's like, oh, you're totally fine. Like, you don't have autism. But when I'm not fine, I'm not fine. There's a lot of cons to it as well. There's certain countries that will not let you immigrate there if you have a formal diagnosis, because they have free healthcare, and they basically are like, you are going to cost us a lot of money, friend. You stay where the fuck you came from. We don't want you here. You also have the potential to face discrimination. So you could be discriminated against when it comes to fostering a child or adopting a child. Technically, is it illegal? Yeah, of course. But in order to sue people for doing shit like that, you need money. So a lot of disabled people don't have that, because guess what? I can't work 45 fucking hours a week. You know what happens when I work 40 to 45 hours a week? I burn out and I want to be... You can be put on, like, you can be given a DNR. You can be refused organ transplants. You can be refused, like, gender affirming care. You know, it's a lot to consider if you actually go forward to a formal diagnosis, because... And also, it's expensive, and typically insurance doesn't cover that. So you're shelling out $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 or $5,000 for this diagnosis. What the fuck do I look like shelling out $4,000 for a diagnosis for a piece of paper to tell me that I'm autistic? Like, I could have told you that. There's nothing that I can do with that piece of paper for myself personally. There are no accommodations that I need that piece of paper for. Why would I waste my money doing that just because some holistic person told me that I can't self-diagnose? Yeah, well, 20 fucking 100 autistic people told me that it was okay. One of my biggest fears is going for a diagnosis or talking to a mental health professional and them being like, you know, I don't think that you fit the criteria, because I would genuinely have an identity crisis if I couldn't identify as autistic anymore, because then what? You know, I've felt out of place my whole entire life. I've never felt like I fit in anywhere, not even in my family. I've always felt like there is something in between. A lot of autistic people will say it feels like everybody is in on like a joke or something that they don't understand. For me personally, I don't experience that. But for me, it feels like everybody around me is closer to each other than I am to them. It feels like in every relationship, there is, besides like my fiance, because we're around each other so much that like I'm just like, this is, you get me, but like I've just always felt like there is like a piece of glass in between me and everybody in my life that prevents me from getting as close to them as it seems like everybody else is in their life. All I've ever wanted in life is a best friend. I have longed for a best friend for years and years and years and years. I had never had like a really close friendship like that. Like I always see, you know, other people seem to have. But honestly, to be 100% honest with you, I want it, but like I don't want it, you know? I'm not that bitch. I do not have the capacity. It just irritates me when people say that. Like, everybody is self-diagnosing these days. Why do you think that is? Do you think people just wanna be this way? Like, and I am a firm believer that people who are self-diagnosing, who actually aren't autistic or just doing it just like for shits and giggles, they are mentally ill and they also need help. Like, I don't think that there is a sane person out there who's going to fake that. Because if you're faking it for attention. And that means that something is wrong in your brain and you need help too. And I stand by that. I stand by that. People think of self-diagnosis as you looked at a couple of TikToks, maybe you saw a tweet or two, and you said, wow, I relate to that, so I must have autism. The way that it actually goes is you spend your whole fucking life feeling out of place. You spend your whole life feeling like an alien. You spend your whole life thinking that you're soft or weak. You think you're depressed. You think you have anxiety. Maybe you think that you're bipolar. Maybe you think you're a highly sensitive person. I thought I was a fucking starseed. That was the last thing that I ended on. I was like, man, maybe I'm just an alien. I'm not from here. Like, that's why that's why I don't fit in. It's because I'm not from here. So you spend your whole life feeling that way. And then you see a TikTok and you're like, like I can kind of relate to that. And then you see another one and you're like, like that's a little weird. And then you see another one and you're like, okay, maybe I should look into this. So then, you look into it and you're like, nah. And then, you take a couple of screeners. You take the RADS-R. You take the ASPE test. um the autism quotient. You take these tests and you're scoring within range, and you're like, like maybe I just lied, maybe I just didn't understand the questions or whatever. And then you just continue to see that content, and you continue to be surrounded by it, and you continue to relate. So you do a little bit more research, you do a little bit more reading, you read the books, you look at Samantha Craft's list of traits, you read the fucking DSM-5 criteria. You have an itemized list. I have a list in my phone, in my notes app, of all of the traits that I think are neurodivergent traits. I have a Word document on my computer, or it's a drive, it's Google Drive. And it has my RAD score, my ASPE test score, CAT-Q, all of those tests that I've taken that feel significant to me, those are all in there. And I also have the DSM-5 criteria, and underneath each section I have how it relates to me. I've basically gone through the DSM-5 criteria and explained how every aspect of that criteria is in me, is within me, how I fit into every piece of that criteria. And it's not even a stretch by any means. This is just me being honest. And this is just what I remember from my childhood. And that's when you finally start to say, okay, well, maybe there's some truth to this. You join a couple communities, you ask a lot of questions, you read a lot of other people's experiences. And that's when you're finally like, okay, this makes sense for me. This feels good for me. People aren't just waking up one day and deciding, hey, like, it would be really cool if I said that I had autism. It's not that I don't want to be autistic, but like, if I wasn't autistic and I didn't relate to any of the autistic things, I wouldn't be going around saying that I was autistic. And if I was, I would be mentally ill. Like, something would be wrong with me. Do I think I'm faking it sometimes? Yeah, of course. Sometimes my brain is like, you're just faking it for attention. For the attention that I don't get, because I don't tell anybody. It's really irritating to see things like that. Especially when people are like, oh my God, like, it's gotten so popular, you know, like everybody is saying that they have it these days. I agree that it can be a little bit problematic, and, you know, it can be frustrating that it's gotten so popular. But at the same time, I think that it's been life-saving for a lot of people that it has become so popular, because I wouldn't have ever guessed that I was autistic if I didn't start seeing traits that I could relate to. I think that it's a good thing, ultimately, that it's become popular, because for me and other self-diagnosed people, or people who've gone on for a formal diagnosis, it has been life-saving, because there are so many times where something will happen for me, and it's something that I don't understand until I understand it under the lens of autism. And I'm like, okay, that's the autism, that's just how my brain works. But it would drive me crazy, because my autistic brain, I need to be able to explain things, because that's how I understand them. So if I can't explain what I'm feeling, and I can't explain why I'm feeling it, it's literally driving me nuts. That's just my 2 cents. And also, if you're one of those people that's like, everybody's a little autistic, everybody has a little bit of ADHD. No, the fuck we don't. No, the fuck we don't. You don't. You don't. You don't. And if you think that you do, because you can relate to these things, then you may need to be evaluated, because you might you might have some of it. Everybody may experience similar things. You may have some sensory sensitivities. You might stim. The thing is, it's the intensity, it's the frequency of which these things affect you. And if it's not affecting you frequently and regularly, then no, you don't have autism. And you can't just have a little autism. You can't just have a little ADHD. If you have autism, you're autistic. Being verbal most of the time, being mostly verbal, I do go mute sometimes. But me being mostly verbal and being able to take care of myself most of the time, I would be considered, I would be high masking. and what people would consider high functioning. I don't honestly, like, I don't see the point of functioning labels. I think that they could be helpful. Functioning labels can be helpful if you're not using them under the guise that high functioning autism is greater than low functioning autism. And honestly, I like using support needs better. I have low support needs most of the time. There are people with high support needs. These are people who need a lot of help, like getting dressed. These are people who might be nonverbal. These are people who might need caregivers, like daily. And that person is no more autistic than I am autistic, because it's just our brains. That's just the makeup of our brains, is autism. So whether you're verbal or you're nonverbal, you're just as autistic as each other. So I think that, functioning labels are harmful if we are using them to say, oh, well, I have high functioning autism, so I'm better than somebody who's, at a lower function than me. I like support needs, but it's also important to note that support needs can fluctuate. And no, we don't all have a little bit of it. If we were all a little bit autistic, then there would be no differentiation. There would be no need to differentiate. If we all had a little bit of autism, then autism wouldn't exist, because that would just be the standard. And because it isn't the standard, it is classified under neurodivergence. Do you hear yourself speak? Do you hear the things you say? Shut the hell up! Shut up! Anyways, I'm going to continue to talk about my self-diagnosed autistic experience, because it's fun. I wouldn't change the fact that I'm autistic. When I'm having a good time, I'm having a good time. When I'm not having a good time, I'm not having a good time. But even when I'm not having a good time, it's not, well, actually, yeah, it is. There's no fix for it, and even if there was a fix for it, I wouldn't want it. I'm not broken, I'm just not built for this fucking world. This world isn't built for me. You know what I was built for? I was built to live on a farm. I was built to live on a farm and hug cows and collect eggs and nurse a garden and make bread and do compost piles and walk around barefoot in lots of land and soak up the sun. That's what I was built for. And make jam, fresh jam, and have fruit trees. That's what I was built for. Not this capitalistic bullshit. Like, I don't know what the hell this is. I'm not having a good time. But you know where I would be having a good time? On a farm with some cows and some horses, a couple of dogs, my cats. That's where I would be having a good time. That's just my 2 cents. That's just how I feel, and I felt that way for a while. I'm self-diagnosed and I'm proud. I also do have my therapist's validation. Though she cannot formally diagnose me, she does work with autistic children and autistic adults and children with ADHD. And so she knows the traits. She is educated on these things. So she can't formally diagnose me or formally assess me, but she says I have autism and she says that I have ADHD. And honestly, that's all I need, because it's not on my permanent fucking record. Haunting me. So anyways, okay, I love you. If you watch this whole thing, I love you, and I'm gonna continue to make autism content because it's fun and I like it, and it's my special interest, one of them, I guess. I don't know. Okay, bye.